Hey, Gen Max, welcome to Todos Santos, Mexico, where I've got an exciting interview for you today. I'm actually in Las Tunas, which is a small community just north of Todos Santos, right here along the Pacific Ocean. I've got John and Jaime with me today, and they are going to be, I couldn't decide what story to tell from these guys or what to focus on, so they're going to kind of be all over the map. We're going to talk about running a business because they started a business here in Todos Santos. We're also going to talk about having a baby in Mexico because they did start a family, or they added to their family down here. We're also going to talk about why they moved here. Just a little spoiler alert, I know Jamie's mom, so she lives here in La Paz, actually. So we've got a lot of ground to cover in this interview. We're, of course, going to show you their house and talk about whether they speak Spanish, all the good things that we normally cover. So let's go ahead and meet John and Jaime.
I'm Jaime.
And I'm John.
And we have a lot going on. We're excited to dig in with you and Brighton here today.
Okay, we're jumping right into this video because we've got a lot to cover, but we're going to start where I always like to start, and that is how they got here. So back in the U.S. or Canada, U.S., I guess. And how did they make it down to here in Todos Santos, or specifically Las Tunas?
Well, we had been kind of like looking for a place to go for probably 2 or 3 years. Since we got together, we always talked about living abroad, and Baja was always sort of on our radar. We always kind of felt drawn here. And then Jamie's mom and stepfather moved to La Paz, and we came down to visit them. We were hanging out for a week. We were about to fly home. We were in San Jose del Cabo. We were about to fly home. We checked the weather, and there was 1.5 feet of snow on the ground in Colorado on Memorial Day weekend. And we were like, nah, we're not doing that. So we extended our trip like so many folks down here do. And we stayed another week. And we were just really digging the vibe in San Jose. We hadn't spent much time there before, and we just loved it. We went to one of our favorite restaurants, the Drunken Sailor. And there happened to be a guy there, and he was wearing a Keller Williams Cabo t-shirt. And I worked for Keller Williams in Colorado at the time. And I said, hey, you work down here? And he was like, well, I do both. I split my time. I work for Cabo and I work for my home office in Dallas. And I was like, I need to buy you a drink and dinner. And so we went to the Baja Brewing restaurant the next night with him and his wife, and he just laid it all out how it worked. He introduced me to the folks in real estate, and we just kind of started the journey there. And our initial plan was to come down for 6 to 8 weeks in the Colorado off season. And so we set it all up. We came back down in October, and then things just started rolling from there. And business was good. Life was good. We met a bunch of really amazing folks down here, and we started thinking about maybe this could be a little longer term thing. And we were at a happy hour with my company, and one of my bosses was like, why don't you work on this new development with me? And I was like, we got to go back. We're pregnant. We're going to have a baby. And he was like, why don't you just stay? The baby will be a dual citizen. Your other son will be bilingual by the time he's 5. And Jamie's eyes just went like, ding.
I'm a little bit crazy. I will take really drastic changes very quickly. And in that moment, I just knew we needed to stay. We needed to move here. We needed to have the baby here. So that night, I think I reached out in a local expats group and said, who knows an OBGYN? I'm due in 2 months. And they connected me with a woman here. Her name's Kelly Castaneras, and she's been a doula down in Baja for 20 years. And within hours, I had every piece of information I needed on how to make this happen. That was a Friday. By Tuesday, we had done our temporary residency card appointments. We had a lease signed. We had a midwife, and we had decided on having a home birth in San Jose del Cabo. And it was literally, we flew home, packed our house, got a renter, got our dogs, and drove back. And that was 3 years ago in October.
Okay, so you saw that one of the hats that John wears is as a real estate agent. You'll find his contact information down below if you're looking for something in Todos Santos. And also you heard that they had a baby here. So we are going to talk about what Jaime does and about the business, one of the businesses that they are running here. But also let's start out though talking about having a family here in Mexico.
Having a baby here was incredible. It was an amazing experience. And there's a lot of really incredible community in both Todos Santos and San Jose. We ended up in Todos Santos because of the family communities that are here. I think we have some incredible friends. Our kids have a lot of really good friends, both Mexicans and Americans and Canadians. And When we had the baby, we actually thought, and he's our second, so we already had one, and we had one in school here already. And we thought that we were going to be trying to do split time, going back to the US, and the US being where our kids went to school. And it was actually our experience with the schools here and raising kids here and the community and the families and the way that kids get to live a lot like we got to grow up, where they're playing in the streets and they are out with their friends. And there's just that sense that I don't feel like we have as much in the US anymore. And it's what ended up keeping us here instead of going back to the States or trying to do split time. We found incredible schools that our kids are thriving at and friends that we really love.
Mm-hmm. The schools have been a huge thing, and our kids are both bilingual already. One of them's 3 and he speaks both languages, and our 5-year-old is a translator for the kids that don't fully speak English or Spanish yet, depending on which ones. And the schools here are just affordable too. Like, we only pay a couple $100 a month, and it's just heads and tails different than what we would pay for a school like that in the US. And then, as Jamie mentioned, just the idea that kids can grow up like kids here. We feel like a little bit of that has been lost in the States, and especially in and around the cities and the suburbs and stuff like that. Kids don't, my nieces and nephews are already kind of growing up now, but they never really played outside. Like, they didn't run around in the streets and ride bikes and come home when the street lights came on and stuff like we did. And while here, that's still actively part of how kids grow up. You go down to the beach and all the kids are just running around having a good time. There's a whole rat pack of 5 to 10-year-olds all hanging out and having fun. And that was sort of what really kind of drew us in. And as we mentioned, like, we really got drawn to the family community here in Todos. So that's how we came up from San Jose to Todos Santos, because we really, really met a lot of families that were kind of in a similar boat with us, similar timing with kids, similar outlooks on life. And we just kind of jived with them and really felt like this was the spot to be.
So the kids are away at school right now, which is why we've got kind of a quiet house, except for some construction noise coming from behind me on the next lot over. And we are going to tour this house, but first let's get to Jamie and what she does for work.
So you know already that I had my baby here. So 3 months before we moved here, actually, when we were coming down for our kind of 6-week sabbatical, if you will, to see if it was a romantic pipe dream to live in Mexico. Clearly it was not, because we decided to stay. I exited my marketing agency that I'd had for 6 years. So I went into a period of being able to raise my kids and not have a lot of obligation. But I am an entrepreneur in my heart. I started my first business selling scrunchies to the kids on the playground. I was in 4th grade, and I have had 5 actual businesses since then. So it was about 18 months in to having Caden. I really enjoyed being able to have the time with him. And that is one thing here that culture really encourages and supports, being able to spend a lot of time with your kids, which is amazing. And I got bored. So I was actively looking for new ideas, new things I could sink my teeth into. And I was really into this passive income craze of laundromats and car washes and vending machines. So it actually started with, we were looking at doing vending machines in condo complexes with the kinds of things that tourists forget. And I was actively looking for what we could do there. And this guy posted in one of the expats groups. There's such a great community of expats here where we really support each other, finding the information we need. And sometimes opportunities fall in your lap through those groups. And he was looking for partners to have water vending machines. And that was really interesting to me for a lot of reasons. One of the things I didn't want to do with the vending machine business was restock all the time. So we fell into this because I was looking for something else. However, I've always cared a lot about water, and I've cared a lot about the community, people being taken care of and having what they need as essential. And one of the things I always noticed here in Mexico is that the water really, it's a struggle. It's a piece that a lot of people don't have access to good water, and you have to pay for clean water. And that was an area I was interested in seeing if there was something we could do. So this kind of fell into my lap all at the same time. And we invested in the company. One thing led to another. that's a much longer story, but we ended up getting much deeper involved with the business because we found out about what the technology was. And we realized that our co-founder needed help moving the manufacturing to Guadalajara and the operations of the business. And having built 5 businesses and been involved with everything from startups to venture capital to corporate environments, I kind of knew how to do the operations of that. So that was 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
I know. And it really has taken us through this ride where I now am the co-founder, and John is a co-founder as well, mainly because I've like dragged him along into it. No, because he's got a brilliant brain and I need it to bounce off of all the time, because we have this really incredible technology that doesn't exist here in Mexico. It actually only exists in one tiny town in Ontario where the inventor created it. And we have inherited that technology, that license. And it actually cleans water while keeping the minerals in the water, which is so important because we have the main source of clean water in Mexico is through purificadores who use reverse osmosis. Now, it makes your water really clean, but there are all of these studies across the World Health Organization and other deeper studies around the world that show drinking distilled water entirely is actually really bad for your body, your immune system. It can cause severe issues with the way that your body is processing minerals. And that is the main source of water here in Mexico, is purificadora reverse osmosis water. So being able to bring this technology here and have it so that, yes, people can have it in their homes, their whole homes, but we are testing out. We have our first machine being tested here, a vending machine where it is a pay on your honor system, where those who can afford to pay for the water, and those who can't are able to get clean water for free. And it's like kind of where my heart lives. So with Aquario, the technology that we have allows us to bring clean water to expats in their homes because we're so used to not having to deal with that particular problem in a way that is more similar to the water you're used to, the tastes of the water, the mineral water that you have in your homes in the US, and also provide clean, healthy, hydrating water for people of the community who may never have had access to that before.
So their vending station, their water vending station is actually just down the street, walking distance from the house that we are renovating here. I haven't tried it yet, and we're actually going to do a water taste test here, because the water here at their house, they've got both the water from their system and also a kind of more traditional model. This is a rental unit, so the house came with a different water treatment thing. And the way it works down here, for those of you who aren't familiar, is you kind of have 2 choices. One is you buy water in garrafones, so they're like 5-gallon jugs, and typically just under $1 a piece or something like that. If you have it delivered, it's a little more expensive. And also you can have a water purification installed in your entire house or at your sink. So those are some of the options, and no one here drinks the water. The locals drink purified water from all of those. They typically have the garrafones. They typically come and I see them buy like 1, maybe 2 at a time. Whereas most of the folks, the foreigners here like us are, have like 5 jugs or something like that, and just kind of like group our trips together. But we are going to do a water taste test, and we are going to take a tour of the unit here. But let's switch now to, I want to talk more about starting a business here in Mexico, because that is something Jamie started many businesses. So maybe we'll talk about some of the things that are a little bit different about having a business in Mexico versus having a business back in the United States.
So we both have businesses, actually, because as a real estate agent, John has to operate as an independent contractor. And at a certain point, you move into corporation once you've made enough money. So both of us actually have our businesses currently operating under an RFC, because we can take advantage of the tax rule here that allows you to act as an independent contractor until you've made a certain amount of money. And that's why it's really important to have a really, really amazing lawyer that works with you and guides you at which step, at which time it is to move from one thing to the next so that you're taking the most advantage of the tax situation, because it's very complicated here.
Very different.
Very different. Especially if you've started businesses in the US. One of the biggest things is the IVA. Mm-hmm. And with the IVA, it's charged on everything, every service, and it is your responsibility to pay for it. So we charge it to the customer, and then we have to, and it's reported on a factura, which I'm sure you've probably heard about from Brighton on many different videos. It's one of those things that when we create the invoice for you, it is reported to the government immediately what that is, and then we're expected to pay that within the next month.
Invoicing here is totally different. Effectively, is like almost a government-sponsored invoice that gets reported to their tax system. And one of the biggest difference here is you have to pay your taxes every month, which is totally different from people that do business in the States and I assume Canada, where you pay at the end of the year and you retroactively go back and write things off. And that does not really happen here. It's a very different structure. It is, fortunately for us, very beneficial if you're making up to a certain amount of money. And please, I don't pretend to be a tax or legal expert, so please do your own diligence. We can provide some resources for that as well. But if you're making up to like 150 or 175,000, you fall into this, and you work in an independent contracting type role, you actually qualify for much lower taxes where you're paying the IVAs, but those are typically paid by whoever you're doing business with. And then you do have to pay those every month, but your actual income tax is somewhere in the neighborhood, again, don't quote me, of about 2% of the money that you're actually making. So up until that particular point, when you're operating as an independent contractor, it's actually quite beneficial. Once you go over that, then you go into a whole different category and a whole different tax bracket, and things change, and then you're in a much higher category. So, and
it also affects your U.S. income. So there's a whole bunch of things there, which is, again, we'll give Brighton the information about Izzy, who has guided us in so many of these conversations and really knowing what the next step is and when to do certain pieces. We're very fortunate that with the water company, our permitting is very minimal based on what we have to do locally. It's different from like if you're going to open up a physical location or a physical store, that requires different kinds of permitting. So with like our vending machine are able to operate under the existing store because it's considered like an ATM. So it's one business. It's an interesting one to get into because it does limit the amount of permitting and different pieces that we've had to do on that front. So we've been the bigger pieces have been around taxes and how to structure the business and which ways to do that are the most beneficial, working with SAT and getting that all correct. So I don't know that I don't think we could have done it without support and help.
Yeah. And talking to people that have done it before, the community of entrepreneurs here is actually quite extensive, and everybody has made the same mistakes. And so at least you can try to avoid some when you're talking to people. And I always joke that in Mexico, there's the way it's supposed to be done, the way it's usually done, the way it's sometimes done, and the way it can be done if it absolutely has to be done that way. And so you have to work within the structure and the legal system to make sure you're not violating anything, but there are usually multiple different ways to do multiple different things. And that can be both exciting and can be stress-inducing at times.
Well, I always say that the thing about living in Mexico is it really forces you to learn and activate your ability to be with patients. And I love that about it. The New Yorker in John, I think, still sometimes wants that efficiency. Some blusa in order to like work within the system in Mexico. I'll pull this back to having a baby here. I never thought I would appreciate American bureaucracy until I went through the process of getting my son's citizenship. And the thing is it's just a part of it all here. It wasn't just us as Americans moving here. it was everyone going through that particular process with the civil registry. And you just are able to take a moment and take a step back and recognize that like the slower pace sometimes supports you. And in running businesses here, that definitely, you kind of trust the pace of life a little bit more.
When we were first moving down here, and I was talking to somebody who had lived here for 10 years, and he had gone back to California, and one of his words of wisdom was like, don't try to swim against the stream. Everything you're gonna burn yourself out. Like, you have to be able to go with the flow. Like, you want to be able to be like efficient and do things well and everything, but like, you can't try to change the system. You need to be able to work within it, and that has to be something that I'm consciously working towards on a regular basis. So, and I've preached that to other people, and most of the time, myself included, people don't believe it when you tell it to them until they've experienced it themselves, and they're like, I remember that guy told me that, and he was right about it.
Yeah, it's the system. And there's also culture to it too, that I wouldn't even just say it's mañana time. I think we've both learned how to just be in more flow with what's happening, because there's a lot you can't control, and it works out. Yeah. It works out when it does. And we've found that kind of even more synchronicities also happen, even within business. The right people pop up after we've had the patience and the time to support us in the next step that we need to take.
Yes, it's definitely complicated to have a business here. I don't make a lot of money in Mexico, and I'm also under that, 2% tax regime called Recico. It's great for independent contractors. It doesn't work for Airbnbs, by the way. So we've got essentially the business is set up under my name and under Kat's name for the different type of things that we're doing. But also, I have a accountant who issues those facturas for me because they're complicated. They all have to go through a government website, and I issue so few invoices and receipts that I just have her do it every single time because it's a little bit complicated. So, but you know what I want to do right now is I want to go back to the water and I want to taste it. Mm-hmm. So I want to see if I'm going to be able to taste the difference between water that's coming from a regular filter system and one that's coming from their system. So let's get some water out here.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we're going to do our taste test here, and I'm going to explain a little bit about the water here. Unfortunately, we don't have a bottled water that would be from a CL bottle, which is what you'll usually see, or from Purificadora. But the two options that we have right now are from a multi-stage filter. So this is what you'll see typically down here, sometimes with a UV light, sometimes without one. And this will get rid of most of the things that you're concerned about. It has different layers to go through to get rid of a lot of the pieces in it. So it will maintain some of the minerals, which is why this water is going to taste closer than if we had a Purificadora water. Purificadora water or CL bottles are they're like distilled water. They are reverse osmosis, which means they need a TDS, a total dissolved solid, of less than 20 to technically pass for the clean, purified water that reverse osmosis does. Mineral water, you want it to be between 200 and 300. That's typically what you see at spring water. And that's going to have the calcium, the zinc, the magnesium that is supportive for your body. So a reverse osmosis water, and I want to point to this because this is actually the water that is bottled using our filtration system and sold in stores. But a bottled water from the store or from a Purificadora is going to be missing all of those minerals, which makes it taste a bit sharper, was the word that you used.
Yeah, I think reverse osmosis to me now tastes very sharp, where our water, and she was going to get a little more detailed on that, because it's pH balanced at an 8. It's not a super high alkaline water like you see those for sale in the store, and they're 9.5, 10 pH. Mm-hmm. And that's good if you really need to just get that boost. But at an 8, where our water is, that is the perfect pH balance for your body. And that is what makes our water taste like silkier and smoother, as opposed to that sharp when it runs through the reverse osmosis.
So these will taste a little bit similar, but our water does go through the process of a molecular structure change. Not to get too complicated on that. The way that the system works is a small amount of energy goes through it. It coagulates everything bad, but that's including pesticides, heavy metals, arsenic, lead, viruses, and bacteria all get essentially rendered inert and clumped so they can be caught in a multi-stage filter afterwards. So it's an additional piece that will add to that, and that also increases the pH balance. So it gets rid of all of the impurities, including pesticides, which are really big in the groundwater here in Todos Santos and in Pescadero, because we have a lot of farming. In La Paz, there's a higher rate of arsenic because of the mining sediments that are over there. So those are two things that this will deal with. The multi-stage filter does get rid of a lot of the heavy metals. So that is really good. It doesn't add the pH alkaline increase. So I think it'll be really interesting to see. These are closer, but they should taste a bit different. I'm really interested to see what Brighton thinks about the difference in them.
Okay, here we are. We're ready for the test. And I'm a little nervous here. I want to make sure that I do find something. And I want to be honest too for you guys. So we're going to start with the water from the multi-stage filter that was installed in the house before these guys moved in. Okay, that's number one. And number two is the filter from their system, which was across the room. I think I can taste that silkiness.
No.
It's subtle. I can say that there's a subtle difference. And as Jamie said, it would be more of a difference if it was water coming from a purificadora. What do you guys think now? Because you guys have been drinking this water for a while. So let's switch the camera back and have them do the taste test of their water versus the water that's coming out of their sink.
All right. So we're going this one first.
Yeah. So this is the sink water.
The clean sink water.
Clean sink water, safe to drink, but
Yeah.
very
We're not poisoning ourselves here.
very bland to me.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this is our.
I feel like we should have an aperitif or something.
Yeah, you need to.
You gotta clear your palate.
But this is our water that we picked from our vending machine down the block.
Yeah, just this morning.
Yep. It just makes me want to drink more though.
Yeah.
You know, like I just.
That's the thing that we do say that 2 garrafones is kind of the number where it seems like your taste buds get really acclimated to it. And I will agree that when you have a multi-stage filter, it keeps the minerals, and that's part of what keeps the flavor. So it is going to be a subtle difference. I feel like we're going to have to send you home with some water to try with some purificadora water, and you can do another test so that you can do a little extra segment.
Perfect. And you've got the bottled water here. So,
yeah. We'll send you home with one of the bottles. Perfect.
There we go. Perfect. Okay, so these guys are finishing off their cups, and they're taking the small cups though. They're drinking from their water, and I obviously, if you're more of a water connoisseur, you are going to be able to taste the difference. It's kind of like wine. If once you drink a lot of wine, you can start to taste the subtleties. So, but let's switch gears now and let's talk about the place that they live, starting with the community that they live in.
Well, we live here in what is affectionately considered downtown Las Tunas, which is kind of a misnomer because it's not really a downtown, but right here we call it, I kind of feel like it's the epicenter of Las Tunas, because right in our backyard, when everybody asks us where we live, we're like, do you know where Five Tacos is? Do you know where Baja is? And they're like, of course, we're there all the time. We're like, we listen to their live music every night from our bedroom. We live right behind there. But fortunately, Baja midnight, everything closes down pretty early. So we get a nice little happy hour sounds. And that is the area that we live. So we're right behind 4 or 5 really nice restaurants, really fun social places. And then Las Tunas is about 5 minutes out of downtown Todos Santos. It's a neighborhood that's been around for a long time, but it's seeing a lot of growth right now. And that's because there's a lot to do here. There's a lot of restaurants. We're about a 5-minute walk to the beach here. There's also some some trails that we take our kids on their mountain bikes, and they ride all around on there, and you can go through the horse pastures and all different areas. That is a little bit, feels like a classic Baja kind of experience. And then for me, as being a guy that moved here from Colorado and loves his bike and mountain biking, I ride right across the street, and there are 20-ish, 30 miles of trails all up through the hills on the Las Tunas hillside, and you just have incredible ocean views. And I've met the guys that built the trails, Machete Mike, who moved here from Alaska 25 years ago and literally hand cut all the trails with a machete, and just some really interesting characters that I always run into out on the trails there. So we really loved Las Tunas. We've lived, obviously, as we talked about, in a few different places. We were in San Jose for a while, and then we were in Pescadero for a while, and now we've been in Las Tunas just about a year, and we're really digging it here. The family culture, we have friends that live in the neighborhood. We have a family that lives right next door to us that actually owns our property and their property, and they're really incredible, and they're probably the best landlords that we've ever had. And we were property owners in the States for a while, but our landlords here are just amazing. They just help us out with everything, and they've been here a long time. They're some of the original locals to this neighborhood. So we love Las Tunas, and I feel like it's a great spot for families.
Let's talk about the surf break that is
And
up
then
the road.
you got about 5 minutes out to La Pastora, which is out by the famous Green Room restaurant that a lot of folks come down and check out. And right there is La Pastora, and it's a really incredible surf break. It's what the locals refer to as kind of their big wave break in the winter. When it gets really big, that's the spot that you can go and you can actually get barreled. And when I say you can. I probably can't get barreled, but I have designs on that someday. So really nice to be kind of close to the trails, close to the beach, 5-minute walk down Cayelos Mangos, and then also close to a surf break over in La Pastora. That's kind of one of Baja's, literally one of its best surf breaks. And I don't feel, I'm not blowing up a spot there or anything like that. Everybody knows La Pastora.
So that's great. So that's covering the area that we're living. Now let's talk specifically about the house that they're living in.
So our house here, we kind of fell in love with it the moment that we saw it. Now, we had a few other kinds of housing experiences, which that would be one of the things you experience if you are not buying down here. Rent and rentals can be a journey. We had a really great place down in San Jose, then a place that was kind of falling apart in Pescadero, and we landed here. And I feel like this is one of the best uses of space that I've seen for a tiny kind of departamento. We live on the second floor of our unit. There's a lock-off down below us that's Airbnb, and it's not rented super often, which is great. And there's also another lock-off unit that is our landlord's mother's unit, so also not used very often. So we're very fortunate in that. I find one of the things in Mexico is really interesting. They will tend to have really big rooms and really small rooms, and it's kind of a strange use of space. So we feel like we're very fortunate to have 3 bedrooms here, so we can have an office and store a lot of the stuff as we're growing this water business, and have a good place for all the kids to play. We have a really nice deck. Not as good as a view as we've had in past locations, but one of the things about Las Tunas that I really love is it's very green, which in Baja can be hard to come by. So we're surrounded by a lot of trees and a lot of vegetation, which this year in particular is even greener, but we have a lovely deck. We spend a lot of our time there. We eat most of our breakfasts there, some of our dinners, which is, you'll see when we take a little tour. We have a tiny little table because it's a tiny little living room. Make the most of the space that we have.
So give room for the boys to run in circles.
Yeah, enough room for our 3 and 5-year-old to run in circles and not fall on the concrete floors, which is also very common here. We have a great little kitchen. It's small, but it's perfect for a small family. Everything we need. I think one of the things that you also find a lot in Mexico is these totally open concepts, no cupboards situation, which forces you to be a little bit more minimal and a little bit more organized, at least is what I've found, because I get a little crazy when there's too much stuff happening. And then we have an office where we have stored many filters and things right now. A really lovely kids' bedroom. We highly recommend if you have kids, especially kind of wild ones. We have these really great foam mats you can buy on Amazon, and everything is concrete here. So that's a way that we've been able to feel a little bit saner about not worrying about heads hitting the floor, and a really large master bedroom and bathroom, which also we really didn't seem to find many other places.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a really nice master. It gives you a little sanctuary.
yeah, little spot away where I also have my desk that I do the work for the water business, and then the other work that I do I'm not going to get into.
So we're going to leave a little bit to a future interview, I guess, with Jamie, because she's got more businesses, more things going on. But I want to get a tip from these guys, maybe a tip from each of them, just for you, for maybe business in Mexico, having a family in Mexico, just whatever it is.
My biggest tip would be, if you are someone who enjoys building a business or starting a business, don't be afraid to start one here, just because it can be a little bit more complicated. It is a really good opportunity to make money here, be a part of the community, get deeper within the community. We have on all sides, it has helped us to gain a lot more friendships, deeper relationships across Mexicans and expats. And it's given us a lot more depth into the community because of starting a business here. So you can find the resources you need to make it happen. And I would encourage you to do it if it's one of the ways that you want to support yourself while living in Mexico.
I would say if you're considering moving down here, whether to rent or to buy or whatever, or spending a full year or a long time down here, is to come down and experience a bunch of the different communities before you pick which one. Every area has their own kind of personality, from La Paz to Todos Santos to Pescadero and Cerritos to Cabo San Lucas, obviously totally different. San Jose, totally different. The East Cape and Los Barriles and places like that are all really unique. And then even within, let's say, Todos Santos, like I said here, like this vibe in Las Tunas is totally different from downtown Todos Santos. So I would just encourage people to come and try out a few different areas to get the feel for where your personality fits and for your kind of likes and wants and needs and stuff along those lines. Because each one is really, we found even a difference from Pescadero to here, and it's only 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away. And we find the communities to be different, and each has their own positives, and then like everything, each has their own challenges. At this moment, we really like Las Tunas, but we also own some land and stuff in Pescadero. We have lots of families and friends and stuff going on there too. So we feel really good about this area in general. And then, as I said, we spent a lot of time in San Jose, and we really liked that vibe too. Cabo San Lucas, we haven't spent as much time in. I've done some business there, but we don't spend a ton of time there. We like going back to San Jose, but we don't do Cabo Wabo too often.
Yeah.
Jamie, do you have something about having a family here?
I would say don't be afraid of having your kids here. It's been one of the greatest things, I think, for our kids to get both the experience and the exposure to a totally different culture than they have at home. We're fortunate to be able to go back and spend 6 weeks every summer with cousins and different people so that they can also see and feel what it's like in the US. And we have just found that the schools, the families, the thought process of how kids are supported and developing here is incredible. So don't be afraid to bring your kids here and move the family here. It's been an amazing experience for us. You definitely have to be willing to explore a different way of living, as we kind of talked about earlier, and a different pace of life. But I think that's why we came.
So if you enjoyed this story, be sure to push that share button so that other people can experience it too. And if you're ready to watch some more videos, I've got options on the screen here, something YouTube thinks is perfect for you, or other stories from foreigners who are living in Mexico who are making it happen. So from here in Todos Santos, wish you were here. Hasta luego.